All right, let's jump right in, shall we? Today we're tackling Python web frameworks,
Oh, yeah.
specifically Flask and FastAPI.
A classic dilemma.
It really is.
Mm.
And we're going to break it down so by the end of this, listeners, you'll know exactly which one to use for your next project.
No more agonizing over the right tool for the job.
Exactly. Because let's face it, picking the wrong framework can lead to,
Uh,
some serious headaches down the line.
totally. It impacts everything. I mean, how fast you can actually build the app, how it performs, even just how much you enjoy the process.
For sure. But here's the interesting thing. Both Flask and FastAPI, they're both built on Python, right?
Right.
But they have very different approaches.
Yeah, it's almost like they come from different planets, even though they speak the same language.
Okay, I like that.
Yeah.
So let's start with Flask. I often hear it called, like, the lightweight champion.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What's behind that nickname?
Well, Flask is all about keeping things simple. It's super easy to learn, especially if you're just starting out.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, imagine a set of really nice building blocks.
Okay.
You get just the essentials for building a web app, but you get to decide how you put those blocks together.
So you have a lot of freedom.
Exactly. You're not boxed in by a rigid structure.
So that makes it perfect for things like prototyping, right?
Absolutely. When you want to quickly test an idea or get a basic app up and running,
I can see that. I feel like a lot of data scientists also gravitate towards Flask.
you're right. A lot of them use it to build like web interfaces for their machine learning models, stuff like that.
Makes sense. Okay, so Flask is all about flexibility, simplicity. But what about when you need raw speed? Like, performance is non-negotiable.
Then we're talking FastAPI territory.
Okay, bring on the speed demon.
FastAPI was built for speed from day one, and one of its sweet spots is building APIs.
Now, I know we've talked about APIs before, but can you just quickly remind our listeners why they matter so much these days?
Yeah, sure. So APIs, they're basically messengers that let different apps talk to each other. Like imagine you're ordering food through an app.
Okay, yeah.
That app is using an API to talk to the restaurant system to send your order, get updates, and all that.
So it's like the glue that connects different pieces of software.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And in today's world where everything is interconnected, APIs are everywhere. And that's where FastAPI shines. It can handle a crazy amount of requests super fast because it's asynchronous.
asynchronous. That's a word that might need some unpacking.
Okay, so picture this. You're at a restaurant.
Right, I'm there.
In a normal synchronous system, the waiter takes your order, goes to the kitchen, waits for your food, then brings it back to you, right?
Right,
But they can't do anything else until your order's done.
I see. So one thing at a time.
Yeah. But in an asynchronous system, the waiter takes your order, then immediately goes to take another order.
They don't wait around.
Nope. The kitchen lets them know when the food is ready,
Uh-huh.
and that way they can serve way more people much faster.
Makes sense. So FastAPI is like that super efficient waiter.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just one of the reasons it's so fast. It also uses something called type hints in Python, which helps it optimize the code even more.
So even something as specific as that can make a difference in performance.
It all adds up. But look, I know this is all very exciting, fast API this, speed that. It's important to remember, though, that
Right, yeah.
you don't just pick a framework because it's shiny and new.
I agree.
You need to figure out what your project actually needs, what your priorities are.
Yeah, what problems you're trying to solve.
Exactly. There's no one winner in this race.
Well said. Okay, so we've got the basics. Now let's put them head to head, shall we?
Let's do it. Let's dive into those head-to-heads. Remember we talked about microservices?
Oh yeah, those mini apps working together.
Right. FastAPI is often the go-to framework for those.
But why is that? Is it just because of its speed?
That's a big part of it. Think about it. With microservices, you're breaking your app into all these smaller pieces.
Dividing and conquering.
Exactly. And each piece, each microservice has to communicate with the others really efficiently. And FastAPI, with its asynchronous nature, it's like a master communicator. It can handle all that back and forth without breaking a sweat.
So it's not getting bogged down waiting for each task to finish, like that slow waiter we talked about.
Exactly. But Flask could have a place here too, right?
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, Flask's lightweight and minimalist, so it could be great for keeping those individual microservices nice and lean.
So each microservice would be super efficient on its own.
Right. It really depends on your priorities. If raw performance is everything, FastAPI wins. But if you need to keep things simple, maybe resources are limited, Flask might be better.
I'm seeing a pattern here. It's not about which framework is better. It's about which one fits the project.
Exactly. There's no one size fits all. Okay, so let's talk about a different world. Machine learning.
All right. Yeah. Python's big in that space.
Huge. And we mentioned that Flask has been popular for building those web interfaces for machine learning models.
Yeah, that makes sense. But could FastAPI also be used there?
Definitely. FastAPI speed is super attractive for machine learning, especially when you need those predictions like instantly.
Real-time stuff.
Yeah. So imagine you've built this model to predict, I don't know, customer churn for a company.
Customer churn, just so we're all on the same page, that's when customers stop using a service, right?
Right, like they cancel their subscription or whatever. It's a big deal for businesses. So with Flask, you can build a web app to get predictions from that model, no problem.
Yeah.
But what if you have like thousands of users hitting that app, all needing predictions at the same time?
Ah, that's where FastAPI comes in.
Exactly. FastAPI can handle that kind of load, no problem.
I see. So if I'm building a machine learning app where speed is super critical, I'd lean towards FastAPI.
It would be a good bet. But if you're just exploring getting started, Flask might be a gentler entry point.
Okay, so for beginners, Flask wins on ease of use, it seems.
For sure. It's got great documentation, tons of tutorials online. It's very beginner friendly.
Whereas FastAPI might be a bit more intimidating at first.
Yeah, it throws in some more advanced concepts like asynchronous programming.
Right. But it also has good documentation, right?
Oh, yeah, and a really helpful community. Plus, that type hinting thing we talked about.
You mean where you specify the data type of a variable, like name to story ornament?
Yeah.
Alice?
Yeah, that's it. It can seem a bit fussy at first, but it actually makes your code more readable and helps you catch errors.
Oh, interesting. So it's almost like it forces you to be more organized.
Kind of. And that pays off in the long run, especially on big projects.
So even though FastAPI has a steeper learning curve, those features could make it easier to work with in the long run.
Exactly. Sometimes the thing that seems harder up front actually saves you headaches later. But okay, we've danced around it long enough.
Yeah.
We have to talk about performance.
Yes, the speed demon. I know FastAPI is generally faster in benchmarks, but what does that mean practically?
Okay, think about building something like a social media app.
All right, lots of users, lots of activity.
Tons. With Flask, you might handle a couple hundred users at once fine. But once you get into the thousands, things might slow down.
Ah, so it's not just how fast your code is, it's how well it handles lots of users all doing things at once.
You got it. And FastAPI, because of that asynchronous nature, it just keeps chugging along, even under heavy load.
So anything that needs to scale really big, like a social network, a chat app, FastAPI is probably the way to go.
Most likely. But remember, it might take a bit more time to learn and set up initially.
Right. The trade-offs never go away.
They're always there. And hey, sometimes the best solution might be to use both.
Oh, that's an interesting idea. How would that work?
You could use Flask for parts of the app where it's more about ease of development.
Right.
And then bring in FastAPI for the parts that need to be super fast, like your API.
So it's not always an either situation?
Nope. Sometimes the best tool is actually two tools.
I like that. Okay, so the Flask versus FastAPI decision is more nuanced than it might seem at first.
Way more nuanced. It's about understanding the strengths of each and figuring out how they fit your specific needs.
Exactly.
And let me tell you, companies are really looking for developers who understand frameworks like Flask and FastAPI.
So just knowing those names can give you an edge.
It's not just about the names, it's about what they represent. Companies need people who can build web apps that are efficient, that can handle lots of users, that aren't a nightmare to maintain.
And knowing these frameworks shows you can do that.
Exactly. It shows you're not just a coder, you're a problem solver. You know how to choose the right tool for the job.
And that's a valuable skill in any field.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But I know the big question is still out there hanging in the air.
Which one is better, Flask or FastAPI? The ultimate showdown.
And as much as I wish I could give you a definitive answer,
there just isn't one. It all comes back to what you're trying to build, what your priorities are.
no silver bullet, just careful consideration.
That's the name of the game.
So we've really journeyed deep into these frameworks, haven't we?
We have, from Flask's simplicity to FastAPI's, need for speed.
That's right. Microservices, machine learning, even the idea of mixing the two.
A lot to think about.
Yeah.
But hopefully our listeners are walking away with one key idea.
Which is?
That there's no one winner. No best framework, just the best one for you.
I like that. But before we completely wrap things up, let me throw out maybe a provocative thought.
Cool, I like those.
What if, and hear me out here, what if the future isn't about Flask or FastAPI.
Okay, I'm listening.
What if it's about like some kind of hybrid, something that combines the best of both?
It's interesting. You're talking about like a framework where you could start with Flask's ease of use, but then as your app grows, you could bring in FastAPI's power.
Exactly. It'd be like the ultimate toolbox. It would. You could switch between them seamlessly depending on what you need for each part of the project.
And maybe even like achieve things that neither framework could do on its own.
Oh, for sure. I mean, think about it. We're already seeing this trend towards more modular architectures, right? Where everything's pluggable, customizable.
Right.
It's not crazy to think that web frameworks could go in that direction too.
It's exciting to think about. I mean, that would give developers so much power to build, well, really anything they can imagine.
It would. More efficient, more scalable, just better apps all around.
And who knows, maybe someone's already building it as we speak.
Oh, I'm sure they are. There's always someone pushing the boundaries.
That's what I love about technology. It never stands still.
Exactly. There's always something new to learn, some new problem to solve.
Well said. So listeners, I'll leave you with this. Is a hybrid Flask-Fast API future on the horizon? Something to ponder. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll catch you next time for another exciting exploration in the world of tech.